PlayBoi Carti's producers are responsible for Carti's iconic sound that have left his listeners craving new music. The beat style is so good that beats like this, even with just Carti's ad-libs, have gone very viral. In this video, I'm going to show you how PlayBoi Carti's producers like Pierre-Bourne, Cardo, and Filthy are able to produce these high-energy melodies, hard trap beats, and mix them to sound really hard and high quality without being distorted. So the first step is the melody, and this is where all the energy comes from. You can go and get sample libraries like the Emotional Essence library, and go and drag in a melody like that. Or another really quick way of getting this vibe is going and getting a plugin like Electra X or Nexus or anything that allows custom banks, and go and download a trap or hip hop producer's custom bank for that preset. For example, I just have this random one here in Electra X. I grabbed an arpeggio and listen to how good this sounds. They all have that crazy vibe that works perfectly for Carti songs. I'm gonna pick something a little bit more simpler that will blend into the mix. I picked this ARP here. And just follow to C5. You could also go up or down an octave for a later note. To add a bit of evolution, I always like to have maximum control when going and creating these arpeggios. So I like to recreate whatever the arpeggio is inside a piano roll with another sound, just like this. A lot of PlayBoi Carti songs have a kind of synth or lead that's really harsh. It almost sounds like a kind of electronic flute. So I want to grab this sound here. It has a lot of rhythm to it as well, as it's kind of going up and down. And I created this counter melody here. And if you have a look at our first arpeggio here, we have these notes here. And I'm going to create a faster version of this for the counter melody. So it's going to sound something like this. And we have these first two notes here in an ascending pattern. What I'm going to do is move them up an octave and flip them around, just as I've done here. So we have the C sharp going down to a C, and I pretty much just repeat this, and we have this filthy lead that comes in here. But if you want to change things around for the second repetition or for the last 4 bars, what you could do is invert this. And this inverted version just adds a lot more evolution to this melody. So listening to everything all together, I feel like if you listen to a Carti song and you hear a melody like this come in the intro, you just know that the most insane beat is going to come in after this. Let me add another few random melody layers, and then we can go and add the insane drums on this beat. I grabbed this cool kind of creepy pad here. And as you saw the notes that I was using earlier, there was that C, the F, and also the C sharp. And what I did was I created this very simple chord progression here. If you watch chord guides on YouTube, a lot of them are going to have really complicated chords with 10 different chords coming in throughout the progression. But have a look at how good a simple melody can be when it comes to getting placements. Would you believe that this chord progression here is one button click away from being a multi-platinum melody? I'm going to grab these notes, click shift down, which is going to lower it 1 note, and this is what these sound like. With that in mind, we have this very simple chord progression here that's ready to go. There's one last counter melody I want to add. I don't know if we need it, but I copied the chord progression onto this lead. I'm going to do Alt A, which turns it into an arpeggio, and listen to how much energy this has. I'm going to move it up an octave. And we have this insane arpeggio, which we can bring in later. I'm definitely not going to bring all these layers in at the same time, but listen to how much energy this melody has. Just planning in advance, I'm probably going to have a really intense melody, and then right when the drums come in, all of them are taken out except for the massive drum beat and this chord here. I just quickly grabbed these drum samples out of the Emotional Essence library. We have this massive 808. We also have a few claps, a crash, some hi-hats, this massive kick, these open hi-hats, and these 2 snares here. It would be very chaotic having all these melody layers active while going and making a drum beat. So I'm going to mute them all except for the chord progression and this one lead while making the drum beat. First, I'm going to record the kick sequence, which is going to sound something like this. One thing I like doing with the kick sequence, especially with a really punchy kick like this, is turning down some of the random fill kicks. So we have these three main ones that just absolutely pump in the beginning. Then we have these two. But this one here, it's not as important. I'm going to turn the volume down and it's going to blend in with the 808. You don't want to have something which I call kick fatigue, which is when the kick is absolutely pumping every single time it hits and you kind of get a bit sick of it as a listener. You want the main kicks on chord changes and at the start of every 4-bar sequence to hit. But besides from those, you can turn them down. Same as this kick leading into this triple kick. We can turn this one down. I'm going to copy that kick sequence onto my 808 and turn on ghost notes. And with these ghost notes, this is why I really wanted to have that chord progression in the background. You can see all the notes of the chord progression and you're able to go and follow that with your 808. I have this 808 sequence here. One thing you may notice is the lack of 808 at the start of this 5th bar here. We have the triple kick that comes in and I made it so that on the 3rd kick, that's when the 808 comes in and it gives this cool kind of starter where you have like kick, kick, bass and then it comes in and it really adds so much anticipation for that 808. Which I think sounds really good. When I mix this 808, I'm going to make it sound louder and add some distortion to make it sound more full, but already this sounds really good. I actually grabbed some hi-hat MIDI out of the Emotional Essence library. It's a free bonus inside that pack and just dragged it into this track and got this really cool bounce for a hi-hat. It's basically just a 2-step hi-hat sequence. It has this gap here 2 bars in, and it also has these kind of rolls down here in the background at a lower pitch, which adds so much depth to these hi-hats. And we also have a kind of fill crash coming into the 3rd bar. I also added this fill hi-hat here. And if you have a look at the panning, you'll notice it's all the way off to one side. I also have this other hi-hat here, and I'm going to change the panning to make it across to the other side. So we have these two kind of hi-hats, which are adding so much depth because of how the sample sounds really realistic. And then we're also panning it from side to side. It's something that's going to blend into the background, but it adds so much depth to a melody and makes it sound less robotic and more alive, which is perfect for PlayBoi Carti type beats. I've done the same thing for the open hi-hat. They're panned across the different sides as well. We have this simple snare here. We also have this secondary snare, and then we have another snare which has a couple fills. A lot of the drum samples I picked are quite dry, and I picked those ones for a reason, because when I go and mix and master this track, I'm going to add some reverb and maybe even some delay to make them sound really wide, and it gives me the freedom to go and do that versus using a clap or a snare sequence that already has so much reverb baked into it. So listening to everything together so far, as you can hear, it's a really intense, energetic sounding beat, but it's so crowded and so over the top, and it would be so hard to fit an artist like Carti on this beat. I'm going to click and drag and select every layer that I use, go into the mixer track, click on Insert 1 and do Control-Shift-L, and now we're ready to mix this track. Before we do that, I'm going to jump in and show you another beat that I cooked up, which is perfect for PlayBoi Carti. I'm going to show you some of the secrets and tricks I used to add so much energy and bounce to that beat. So for this second Carti style beat, I grabbed this sequence here, and I copied a chord progression on top of it. And one of the interesting things about a sequence is it continuously moves, so every time you click play, it gives you something different. And the main thing I really wanted to show you in this beat is how the use of different gaps and spaces can add so much energy. If you have a listen to this new Carti song, you'll be able to hear the main kind of melody fade out quickly in an automation, and then the drums cut out for a small amount of time before they come back in.
I need a whole nother level. I'm on the whole nother level. I'm a different type player.
I did the exact same thing here, where I added a gross beat automation to this melody, and what this does is we have a sidechain that really quickly cuts the volume out, and we also have this sidechain which adds a tape stop effect. So this melody sounds like this. I also want to make the hi-hat sequence unique and cut out the hi-hat when that automation comes in. And it adds a pretty cool effect where there are some good spaces in the beat. Which which is perfect for the verse, which is a bit bouncier, whereas the chorus or the hook is a little bit wider, and you want it to carry a lot of the rhythm. So now heading back to the first beat, it's time to actually mix this, and this is so important if you want to get that signature sound. I'm going to start by turning the stereo separation to 100% merged, which means my left and right ear or left and right speaker are hearing the exact same thing, which makes it easier to mix because there's not going to be panning going on confusing you. To give the drums room to absolutely slap, I'm going to start by mixing a lot of the melodies down to the lower volume, and I actually did a teeny bit of mixing in the channel rack and just got these levels where I want because some of them were so loud. We have some people working on the roof right now. I'm going to use my sampler to go and record some different samples of them absolutely demolishing stuff, and I'm going to use it in this beat a little bit later. To give the bass room to absolutely slap, I'm going to go and add this filter on it here and just cut off some of the lows. As you can see, look at how many low frequencies are in this melody. That's going to be massively clashing with the bass. But even with those cut out, it still sounds really full and really high energy. I'm going to do the same thing for all the melodies. I'm going to add a little bit of reverb on this. It already has a teeny bit of delay on it. Make it sound a little bit wider. You can also see all the lows in this chord progression here. So far, the melodies sound like this. With this arpeggio, that can come in a bit later. I'm going to grab the chords and this lead here, and I'm going to use those while mixing the drums. We have this 808 here. It sounds very full, but I'm going to add some distortion to it. And if you have a look at the volume right now, we're hitting at about -12 decibels, which gives us so much room to go and boost the sounds that we really want to hit, like the kick and the 808. I'm going to add some reverb on the hi-hat. We have the beat hitting around where I like, which is around -6 to -3 decibels. I'm going to go and use Isotope Ozone 9. Oh my goodness. Someone's breaking into my house. All right, what hits harder? The kick and 808 on this beat or the people stomping on my roof? Inside Isotope Ozone, I'm going to change the character down to fast, and I'm going to lower the threshold a little bit. I'm going to turn the stereo separation back to 0%, and you're going to hear how good this beat sounds with everything coming in all together. The final piece isn't ready yet, so we have these samples here from the people stomping on the roof. When I go and arrange this beat, we're going to see if we can actually use them. The reason I have the acapella for off the grid here is it's such an easy way to tell whether or not your beat has room for an artist. So for example, I'm just going to click play here.
I'm off the grid, got tats on my ribs, tattoos on my wrists, agitated my kids.
And you can hear that it sounds really good and it's the perfect kind of style, but there's too many layers coming in at once. So we're going to keep that in mind when doing the arrangement. I'm going to grab pattern 1, I'm going to right click on it and click S, which is split by channel, and I'm going to grab everything here and go and drag this in. I'm going to go and duplicate this all. And we have this kind of intro here. I'm going to delete all the drums. I'm going to go and send these random samples here from people stomping and destroying my roof onto a mixer track.
I'm off the grid, got tats on my ribs, tattoos on my wrists, agitated my kids.
You'll notice in a lot of Carti songs, there's samples and ad-libs in the background that add a lot of energy. For example, there's a really iconic money counter one. I'm going to go into the drum kit at the Emotional Essence library. I'm going to go into SFX. I'm going to grab a transition here. And as you can hear, the beat here sounds really good, but it's way too much. So I'm going to remove a lot of the actual melody layers. I'm going to take out the arpeggio here. Also that pluck. I'm only going to leave these in. I'm also going to take out a lot of these random hi-hats, and if you feel like the arrangement of your beat is a bit boring, you can go and add cool gaps like this. As far as the arrangement goes, there's going to be an engineer in the studio with Carti that's going to go and mess with this however they want, but I like to get it as close as possible. So what I'm going to do is have an 8-bar intro, a 16-bar verse, and an 8-bar hook here, and then repeat from there. So to add some evolution to the verse, we're going to have some of these samples coming in a little bit later. I'm going to bring these hi-hats in, and then go and duplicate this here. We have this kind of hi-hat fill at the start of this second 8-bar sequence of the verse. I'm going to make this arpeggio here unique, and I'm going to go and lower the octave of this section here. And we have this cool kind of melody fill, where we have this lower section of the arpeggio come in. I'm going to go and hold shift and drag this whole section out here. I'm gonna do the exact same thing again, and then just go and duplicate all these melodies here for a bit of an outro. And this song is around 2 minutes and 20 seconds. This is actually pretty normal for a lot of Carti songs. For example, this one is 2 minutes and 28. And if you look at Whole Lotta Red, there are some that are even down below 2 minutes, 130, 130, 150. But if you wanna make this longer for some reason, all you have to do is duplicate it one more time, go and add this bit of an outro here, and then you hit the 3-minute section. And just like that, we have this beat that's perfect for PlayBoi Carti. If you wanna learn how other producers make their signature beats for famous artists, click one of the recommended videos. If you wanna get the samples I used in this video, click the link in the description to get the Emotional Essence library for 90% off.